The moment I picked up the crumpled napkin, the entire room went silent in my head, even though the jazz band was still playing and glasses were clinking all around me. It had been stuffed into the bottom of her purse, barely hidden. Smudged red lipstick. Slanted handwriting. A message no married woman should ever write. Same time next Friday. Wear that green dress again. I still smell you on me. I stared at it, blinking, unsure if I was reading it right or if some twisted part of my imagination had finally snapped. But no. It was real. Tangible. Inked in black gel pen. Her pen. I knew it because I bought it for her birthday last year, engraved with her initials. She was 30 feet away on the dance floor, swaying with a man in a slim gray vest. A coworker, supposedly. She once referred to him as harmless and awkward with women. But there she was, smiling like no one else existed, her body close enough to his that even strangers could read the story in their hips. I didn't breathe. She turned her head slightly, and for a second I thought our eyes would meet. They didn't. She never looked toward the entrance where I stood, frozen, still holding her purse because she'd asked me to keep it safe for a minute. I slipped the napkin into my coat pocket. Walked past the bar. Pushed open the back door to the alley without a sound. I wasn't planning to leave the event. I was planning to leave everything. The alley smelled like cigarette ash and cold grease, the kind of scent that usually sticks to your clothes and follows you home. But I didn't go home. I leaned against the brick wall, her purse still in my hand, my thoughts spinning in quiet chaos. The napkin in my pocket felt radioactive. Every time I thought about unfolding it again, my stomach clenched like I was about to hurl. I had no plan. No confrontation script. No cool one-liner to deliver when she came looking for me. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be seen. I just knew that if I stayed in that ballroom a minute longer, watching her melt into someone else's body, I'd say something I couldn't take back. A sharp laugh echoed from the back exit door. It wasn't hers, but I flinched anyway. A group of people stumbled out, 2 women, 1 man, tipsy, glittery, carefree. They didn't notice me in the shadows. That's when it hit me, she didn't either. She hadn't seen me arrive. She hadn't even checked her phone since I told her I'd be coming after my work dinner. She had no idea I was already here, already watching, already walking away in my head. I walked toward my car, slow, deliberate. Every step I took felt like it was pulling me further from whatever life we used to have. I reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, not to snoop, not yet, but just to see what was there. And what was there was him. At the very top of her text thread list. No name. Just a heart emoji and the letter T. T. Tom? Travis? Trevor? It didn't matter. He had a letter and I was a ghost. I tapped on the thread. I hesitated, but then my thumb moved on its own. The messages loaded. I didn't need to scroll far. T, you looked unreal tonight. I still can't believe I get to touch you. Her, you're the only place I feel like myself anymore. Just don't let me fall too deep. Not yet. T, too late? My mouth went dry. I was standing in the middle of a parking lot, but it felt like I'd just stepped into open water. No anchor. No breath. Just cold realization. She wasn't slipping. She'd already fallen. And she was calling it freedom. I didn't read more. I just sat in the car and stared at the black screen of the dashboard, listening to my heart pound. For once, the numbers didn't matter, how long we'd been married, how many anniversaries we celebrated, how many nights I rubbed her shoulders while she vented about work. None of it earned me a single ounce of loyalty. A knock on the window jolted me. I turned, startled, expecting a cop or maybe one of the partygoers. But it was her. Hair messy. Eyes shining. Still in that green satin dress that clung to her body like it had been made to tempt him. She smiled, breathless. There you are. I've been looking all over. Why didn't you text me you were here? I just looked at her. Said nothing. She leaned down, confused. Are you okay? What's wrong? I pulled the napkin from my pocket. I didn't hand it to her. I didn't speak. I just opened it slowly like a magician revealing a trick she forgot she performed. Her face lost all expression. Then she blinked, forced a breathy laugh, and said the line I'll never forget. That's just a joke. It's not what you think. And that was it. Not an apology. Not a denial. Not even her asking how I found it. Just a pathetic attempt to shrink the truth with a lie that couldn't even stand up on its own. I didn't answer. I turned the key, started the engine, and drove off with the sound of her voice fading behind me. She didn't chase me. Not really. She just stood there, caught between panic and disbelief. Like she couldn't fathom the idea that I might finally be done pretending everything was okay. But I was done. And she had no idea what I was about to do next. The next morning didn't feel like morning at all. I didn't sleep. Not even a minute. I'd driven for hours the night before, through empty streets and side roads I hadn't used in years. I ended up parked in the lot behind my old high school, staring at the crumbling bleachers and wondering when I became the kind of man who could lose his wife to someone who signs his texts with a single letter. The sun had started to rise when I finally drove home. Not to see her. Not to speak. I needed clothes, a charger, and one specific thing I hadn't thought about in years. An old duffel bag that I kept stashed in the trunk of my car. The bag had once belonged to my father, and after he passed, I kept it packed for emergencies. Flashlight, cash, copies of important papers, a burner phone I never activated. It was a weird habit. Tessa always teased me about it, called it my doomsday bag. I hadn't touched it in forever. But now it felt less like paranoia and more like prophecy. The house was quiet when I pulled up. Her car was in the driveway. For a brief second, I considered the possibility that she might have left. But no, that would have required guilt or fear, or at least a sliver of respect. She was still here, probably still asleep in our bed. The bed where I used to lay awake and wonder why she stopped touching me like I mattered. I didn't go inside. I went straight to the garage, popped the trunk, and reached for the bag. But it wasn't there. The blanket that usually covered it was folded neatly in the corner. The bag itself was gone. At first, I thought I was losing it. Maybe I'd moved it. Maybe I was so tired I was misremembering. I checked the back seat. Underneath, nothing. Glove box, empty except for insurance papers and an expired granola bar. My chest tightened. I turned back toward the house. I didn't have my keys. I didn't even want to go inside. But something pulled me forward anyway. Some mix of instinct and dread. Like whatever was about to happen was already written and I was just turning the page. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. I stepped in slowly, listening. No sound. No movement. But everything felt altered. Not trashed. Not obviously tampered with. Just wrong. Like a stranger had been inside and left everything just slightly out of place. Pillow on the wrong couch. The kitchen light on, even though she always shut it off before bed. A mug on the counter with lipstick on the rim, and I knew she hadn't been wearing that color when she danced with him last night. I moved down the hall toward the bedroom. The door was open. The bed was empty. Sheets unmade. One side still tucked in, the other side crumpled like someone had thrashed in their sleep. The closet door was ajar, and that's when I saw the bag. My father's bag. Tucked half inside, half out, like someone had pulled it down and didn't bother hiding it properly. I unzipped it. The flashlight was missing. So was the cash. The burner phone was still there, but the battery was out and placed next to it like someone had opened it, checked it, then got spooked. My stomach dropped. She'd found it. She'd opened it. She knew I was preparing to leave, and that meant she wasn't going to wait around to be left. I backed away from the closet slowly. That was the moment I realized something far worse than betrayal was brewing. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning something. Something she didn't want me to be ready for. And for the first time since the night I found that napkin, I felt something stronger than hurt. I felt afraid. I didn't touch anything else in the closet. I zipped the bag back up slowly, quietly, as if the bag itself could betray me if I made the wrong move. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and even though I was standing still, I felt like I was falling forward, like the ground beneath me had tilted. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just emotional distance. This felt strategic, cold. Something had shifted, and it had shifted in a way that made my skin crawl. I stepped out of the bedroom and scanned the hallway like I was in enemy territory. I didn't call out her name. I didn't want to know where she was yet. I didn't want her to know I was here. Not until I understood more. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. I went to her office. She had a small workspace just off the kitchen. Glass door, quiet little nook, where she'd take meetings or pretend to work when she was really watching dumb relationship videos on her phone. But something told me I'd find more than recipe Pinterest boards today. I pushed the door open, slowly, and stood in the doorway. It looked the same as always. Neat, overly neat, like it had been cleaned recently by someone trying to hide the mess they'd made just before. Laptop still on the desk. Her little potted fern next to the window. I stepped in, sat down, and opened the laptop. No password. Strange. She'd changed it just 2 months ago and refused to tell me what it was, because of work confidentiality. But now it was open. Too easy. Felt like bait. But I clicked anyway. The browser history was clean. Too clean. Dozens of tabs open, but none older than 48 hours. I clicked into her email expecting fluff, promos, newsletters, forwarded chain jokes from her mom. I found one unread message, buried deep under a folder labeled Meeting Prep. The subject line was a single character, dot. I opened it. No body text. Just a download link labeled V1.1 MP3. I stared at it for a full minute before I clicked. The file downloaded. I hesitated again. Something in my chest warned me not to press play. But I did. The recording started with static. Then a pause. Then her voice. He doesn't suspect anything. I've been careful. Another voice, male. Calm. Soft-spoken. Careful doesn't matter. If he finds the bag, he'll know. A pause. He won't, she said, her voice tight. And even if he does, I've got the papers ready. The accounts are almost cleaned out. He won't make trouble. Then silence. A long stretch of silence. Just breathing, faint background noise. Then her again. He still thinks I love him. I just need a few more days. I slammed the laptop shut. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. My fingertips went numb. I'd heard of people going into shock, but I always thought that was exaggeration until right then. Until I realized my wife wasn't just cheating. She was gutting our life from the inside. Financially, emotionally, legally. She wasn't planning an affair. She was planning an erasure. And I was one password away from vanishing. I backed out of the room, hands shaking, heart pounding hard enough that I thought it might give me away. My first thought was to run, to get out of the house before she came back. But I made one stop first. I went back to the bedroom. I opened the drawer on my side of the bed, the one she never touched, the one where I kept old receipts and random junk, and, buried under a pack of batteries, a flash drive I hadn't used in years. I plugged it into her laptop, copied the file. V1.1.mp3 now had a twin. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. She'd planned for everything, except for me hearing her say it out loud. I left the house with the copied file tucked into my jacket, the laptop still humming softly behind the closed office door. I didn't slam anything. I didn't leave a trace. I didn't even bother locking up. That house wasn't mine anymore. It had become a hollow shell with fresh paint and someone else's echo living in the walls. She could have it. I drove with no music, just silence. My mind replayed every second of that audio file on loop, like it was trying to etch it permanently into my memory. Her voice was calm in that recording, calmer than I'd ever heard it, like lying and betrayal had become second nature to her. Worse than that was the way she said, "He still thinks I love him." I didn't even deserve a lie wrapped in guilt. Just a plan, clean and clinical. I pulled into the parking lot of a credit union about 30 minutes away, the one my father used to take me to as a kid when he taught me about safety over secrecy. It was one of the few places that still allowed you to rent a physical safe deposit box without an online paper trail. Years ago, after his funeral, I'd taken over his old box. I hadn't thought about it in ages, but now it called to me like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. Inside the bank, the woman at the counter looked up from her monitor and smiled. "Can I help you?" I nodded, still on autopilot. "I need access to box 117. Owen Rayner." She typed for a few seconds, then frowned. "Actually, looks like it's already been accessed this week." I froze. "By who?" "Same name, Owen Rayner. Tuesday morning." "I didn't come in Tuesday." She tilted her head slightly. "Well, someone did. With ID, matching signature, everything." I didn't respond. I just held her gaze, trying to remain calm. If I pushed, she'd get suspicious. If I asked too much, she'd call someone. So I nodded, smiled like it was a mix-up, told her I'd come back later. Back in the car, I sat completely still for almost 5 minutes. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was just heavy, like a truth I didn't want to know was slowly sitting down on my chest. She had access, which meant at some point in the last few years, she'd gotten into my father's safe deposit records, duplicated my signature, and made herself a part of something that was never hers to touch. It wasn't just about hiding money or deleting me. This was generational. This was about reaching into places sacred to me and quietly turning them inside out. And I started to realize this had been building far longer than I ever imagined. This wasn't a spontaneous affair or a midlife itch. This was architecture, blueprints, patience. She had rewritten everything I thought I knew about our relationship, and she'd done it so gradually that I only noticed once the foundation was gone. That night, I checked into a small roadside inn 2 counties away. I paid in cash. No card. No app. No digital record. The kind of place with paper keys and creaky floorboards. The kind of place you vanish to not because you're running from something, but because you're trying to decide who you need to become next. In the room, I pulled out the flash drive and replayed the audio again. This time I listened closer, not just to what was said, but to what was in the background. 3 distinct things hit me. First, the whirring of an old-style overhead fan. The kind they only had in older buildings. Second, the faint hum of jazz music, live, not recorded. Maybe from another room. Maybe a bar. And third, her laugh. Not the fake one she gave strangers. The real one. Soft. Quick. The one I used to make her do when we were first dating and I'd tell her dumb jokes during thunderstorms. She had given that laugh away. And I realized in that moment I didn't miss her. I missed the version of me that still believed her. That was the night I made a choice. Not to explode. Not to scream. Not to destroy. But to document everything. And if she wanted to erase me, she was going to have to face the truth I was now collecting. One quiet file at a time. I didn't sleep that night at the inn. I laid on the stiff mattress with the ceiling fan rattling above me, the audio file replaying in my mind like a haunting loop. Every breath she took in that recording sounded like a message she never meant for me to hear. Every pause, every inflection, it was as if she was whispering secrets directly into my ear, but from behind a mask. At 6:17 a.m. I sat up, opened my laptop, and searched the metadata of the audio file. I'd never done that before, but desperation has a way of turning ordinary people into investigators. Most of it was encrypted, scrubbed clean. But one small detail remained: the file had been originally created on a phone registered under the name Levi Ashcroft. I didn't know the name. It wasn't anyone from her office. Not a client. Not a friend. But it sounded familiar, like something I'd overheard once and forgotten. I ran a search. Nothing came up directly. No public social profiles. No company affiliations that tied him to her. But then I thought of something: her gym membership. A few months back, she started going to a private members-only fitness club that cost more per month than our grocery bill. I asked her about it once. She said it's less about working out and more about networking. All the startup people go there. I'd never liked it, but I didn't question it again. I pulled up the gym's board of directors. One of the founding names? Levi Ashcroft. There it was. He wasn't a stranger. He was a sponsor. A man who funded the place she disappeared into 4 days a week, always coming back flushed, glowing, saying she felt stronger than ever. I always thought it was because she was getting healthy. Now I realized it was because she was getting away with it. I sat there at the little wooden desk in the motel room, staring at the screen, and something shifted inside me again. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just a plan to erase me from her life. It was a collaboration. A 2-person con. And I was the one still paying the bills while they designed their escape. I called the gym. Said I was a reporter doing a feature on the founders and needed to verify some public bios. The woman who answered was half asleep but cooperative. She confirmed Levi's name, then added something that froze me. Oh, he doesn't do press though. He's kind of low profile. But he's usually here early in the mornings. Around 7:30. It was 6:42. I was 22 minutes away. I didn't have a plan. Just adrenaline and something sharp growing in my chest. I threw on clothes, grabbed the flash drive, and drove. When I arrived, I didn't go through the main entrance. I parked behind a bakery next door and walked across the alley, watching the gym through its wide glass facade. Most people inside were too focused on their routines to notice anything. But one man stood apart. He wasn't lifting or running or even dressed to work out. He was standing near the front desk, talking to the receptionist, wearing a dark sweater and sipping from a white coffee cup like he owned the air around him. Tall, tan, confident posture. probably mid-40s. Sharp jawline. A face that knew it didn't have to prove itself to anyone. That was Levi Ashcroft. I didn't go in. I didn't confront him. I wanted to. I fantasized about walking up, slamming the flash drive down, and asking him how it felt to whisper in another man's wife's ear while she planned his erasure. But instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo from across the glass. Then I turned and walked away. By the time I got back to the car, my heart was still racing. Not from anger. From fear. Because in that moment it became crystal clear to me. She hadn't just fallen for someone else. She had fallen for someone who was helping her construct a new identity. And if I didn't act soon, she wasn't just going to leave me. She was going to erase me entirely before I ever had a chance to be heard. After I left the gym, I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't drive home either. I ended up sitting in a nearly empty diner 2 towns over, the kind of place where time seemed to forget to move. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and stared at the photo I had taken of Levi Ashcroft. He looked like the final answer to a question I hadn't realized I'd been asking for over a year. I zoomed in on the photo and studied his expression. No guilt. No hesitation. Just comfort. Control. That face didn't belong to someone having a fling. It belonged to someone running something. And I started wondering, what if it wasn't just an affair? What if this entire thing, her distance, her lies, the money she was moving, wasn't just for love or lust? What if it was for leverage? It sounds paranoid, I know. But once you've heard your spouse plotting your disappearance in a digital whisper, paranoia starts to look a lot like preparation. I drove back to the house after dark. Not because I trusted it, but because I needed something I hadn't told anyone about, not even her. Something hidden years ago, before our marriage started to rot. The envelope. Back when we first bought the house, I did some light remodeling in the guest room. Pulled up the carpet, refinished the wood. One of the planks near the far corner had cracked, so I pulled it out and replaced it. But before I sealed it back in place, I left something underneath. A sealed manila envelope. Inside it, printed bank records, old journal pages, and a single-page letter from my father, the last one he ever wrote me before he passed. It wasn't valuable. Not legally. But it reminded me of who I was before everything became polite dinners and strained silences. I didn't even think about that envelope until now. But suddenly it felt like it might be the only untouched part of my life. I pulled up to the house with the headlights off. Her car was gone. I let myself in through the garage door, careful to avoid the sensor light she'd insisted we install but never actually armed. The place was dead quiet. A different kind of quiet than before. This wasn't a house asleep. This was a house emptied. I walked straight to the guest room, crouched near the corner of the rug, and peeled it back. The plank was still there. But it was loose. My pulse spiked. I slid it open. The envelope was gone. All that was left in the hollow space was a small square of paper, folded twice. I opened it. 4 words. Stop looking. Go away. No signature. No emotion. No room for doubt. I sat back against the wall and let out a slow breath. She'd found it. She'd taken something that had nothing to do with her, something private, something before her, and erased that too. That envelope wasn't leverage. It wasn't value. It was memory. And she destroyed it for sport. This wasn't about starting a new life. This was about reducing mine to nothing. That was the moment I realized something no part of me wanted to admit before. This wasn't just emotional cruelty. This wasn't just a marital collapse. This was psychological warfare. She wasn't trying to leave me behind. She was trying to leave me unrecoverable. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt focused. Because if she was going to build her new life on top of my erased one, then I needed to find the cracks in her foundation. And I already knew exactly where to start. Her accountant. I didn't know what I expected when I tracked down her accountant. Maybe a nameless, tight-lipped number cruncher with mirrored glasses and a bad attitude. Instead, I got Loretta, 62, dry humor, the kind of woman who called things like she saw them and had zero tolerance for nonsense. I walked into her office unannounced, just a name and an appointment I'd faked through her assistant. "You're Owen," she said without looking up from her computer. "Been expecting you." That threw me. Expecting me? She finally glanced up, removed her glasses, and sighed. "I may be a bookkeeper, but I know when someone's cooking a narrative. Tessa moved a lot of money lately, fast and quiet. People like her always forget that even the most discreet accountants still sleep at night. And I sleep better when my conscience is clear." She slid a folder across the desk. I didn't touch it. "What is this?" Every transaction she made since last November. Every backdoor fund. Every hidden transfer. It's all legal. Barely. But it's all traceable. And it all leads to one account. "Levi's?" Loretta gave a tight nod. She's not just trying to run. She's funding something. New business, maybe? Fake identity? Could be both. But the mistake she made, she leaned forward. Was thinking you wouldn't figure it out. I took the folder. Walked out in silence. I didn't feel like a man holding ammunition. I felt like a man holding his future. I didn't confront Tessa. I didn't send her the file. I didn't drop the bank records at her feet. I didn't ask for an apology she'd never mean. Instead, I hired a lawyer. A real one. Someone who specialized in fraud, manipulation, and asset recovery. We worked quietly. We made no threats. Just moves. Strategic, calm, factual. I took back my financial autonomy, filed for separation without warning, and placed a full freeze on any shared accounts. By the time she realized what I'd done, it was already too late. The money was no longer reachable. The house was no longer hers. And I was no longer the husband who waited in the dark for her to come home. She tried to call. I didn't answer. She sent a message. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. I didn't respond. Because she was right. It wasn't how it was supposed to end. But it was how it needed to. 3 months later, I was standing on the same dock where we got married, but this time, alone. Not lonely. Just alone. I'd rented a cabin nearby to clear my head for a week. No drama. No screens. Just silence. The kind that doesn't hurt. The kind that helps you hear yourself again. I'd started therapy. Reconnected with friends I hadn't seen since the wedding. I even picked up woodworking again, not to impress anyone, not to stay busy, but because creating something with your hands reminds you that you exist. And that you can still build. Not from the wreckage, but from the ground up. I didn't need to make her regret what she did. I needed to stop regretting that I stayed for so long. And the day I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just free, was the day I stopped being her shadow. And started becoming someone worth knowing again. Especially to myself.